told you a player people thought was dumb became the greatest tight end of all time?
Yo soy fiesta.
What if I told you this player partied all the time, but still dominated everyone? Well, that player is Rob Gronkowski, and he is one of the most unique people to ever step on a football field. To figure out how he became one of the greatest players in the history of the sport, we have to go back to the suburbs of Buffalo, where he was born. Rob Gronkowski grew up in a sports-crazed family. His dad played college football at Syracuse, his oldest brother Gordy was a future minor league baseball player, and his three other brothers, Chris, Dan, and Glenn, all went on to play in the NFL. Being the second youngest of a group of brothers that brawled every day, Rob learned how to be tough from an early age. When the boys weren't fighting, they were playing full contact mini sticks, which meant they were laying hits and checking each other into the walls. Gronk's parents didn't let him play tackle football till he was in 7th grade, so when he first joined the team, he was a little nervous. He didn't really know the positions and felt like he was behind the other kids that had been playing longer. However, all that changed when he lined up as a tight end. The first time he played the position, he had to block the opposing team's linebacker. So he ran up to him with no fear and laid a massive hit on him. That's when Rob knew he was in the right sport. When Gronk was in middle school, his dad put a home gym in the family's basement. His dad told his sons they all had potential, but if they really wanted to be great, they needed to hit the weights. So that's what the brothers did. They all competed and pushed each other daily in that homemade gym. By the time Rob got to high school, he was towering over all the other students. He didn't just play football either. He was a 3-sport athlete, playing baseball in the spring and basketball in the winter. In one basketball game, he actually intentionally missed a free throw to keep his team score at 69. Then he ran down the court laughing and pointing at the scoreboard. On the gridiron, Gronkowski truly broke out during his junior year. That season, he hauled in 36 catches for 648 yards and 7 touchdowns, which caught the attention of many college scouts. However, prior to Gronk's senior season, his parents separated, so he moved to Pittsburgh. Initially, Rob was ruled ineligible to play at his new school due to transfer rules. But once that ruling was overturned, the tight end only had 8 receptions for 152 yards and 4 touchdowns. Despite the decline in his stats, Gronk was still rated as a 4-star recruit. He received scholarship offers from over 60 schools, including some powerhouses like Ohio State, Penn State, and Clemson. But it was the very first school he visited that caught his eye, Arizona. And in a somewhat surprising move, Rob committed to the university instead of one of the more prestigious programs that had offered him. When his dad asked him why he picked the school, Rob responded, "Dad, if you ever went to a pool party at Arizona, you'd understand." After arriving on campus, Gronkowski immediately made an impact. As a freshman, he had 525 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns, which set a school record for the most yards in a single season by a tight end. His sophomore year, he just got even better. Despite missing 3 games, he hauled in 47 catches for 672 yards and 10 touchdowns. Heading into his junior season, there was hype surrounding the tight end. NFL teams were sending scouts to watch him, and if his junior year was anything like his previous 2, he was a lock to go in the first round of the draft. However, before the season started, Rob felt a shooting pain going down his legs. He tried to continue training, but the pain just got worse. And eventually, his legs felt like they were 500 pounds each. Tests soon revealed that Gronkowski had a ruptured disc and nerve damage in his back. So now, just 7 months before the NFL draft, Rob had to undergo a serious surgery, one that would force him to miss all of his junior season and possibly change the way he played forever. Following the surgery, Gronk attacked his rehab and shocked many when he declared for the NFL draft that January after only playing in 22 collegiate games. His draft stock had plummeted though after sustaining such a serious injury. Teams were hesitant to draft him because he hadn't played football since before the surgery, and there were no guarantees that he would be the same player as before. During the pre-draft process, the Patriots, one of the most buttoned up, no-nonsense no-nonsense organizations wanted to meet with Party Boy Gronk. When Rob got to the facility for his visit, he was put in a room to wait for the coaching staff. But when the staff walked in to start the meeting, they found Gronk asleep on the floor. Once he was woken up, the meeting started. The offensive coordinator drew up a play on the whiteboard, erased it, then asked Rob what the receivers were supposed to do on said play. He responded, "I have no idea. You just throw me the ball and I'll run some people over." Like many projected first-round picks, Gronkowski and his family went to the draft in New York. The Bengals, the team with the 22nd overall pick, had shown interest in drafting him. So when they were on the clock and selected another tight end, Jermaine Gresham, Rob was heartbroken. His mom said that's the only day in her entire life where she's seen Rob in a bad mood. The next day, when the second round started, a team traded up to the 42nd overall pick to draft Gronkowski. And that team was the team he fell asleep on, the New England Patriots. After Rob's name was called, he and his brothers were going crazy. Head coach Bill Belichick saw them doing this on TV and had his assistant call Gronk to tell him to get off the stage. When Rob first got to New England, things weren't easy. The first time he was in the huddle with Tom Brady, the play was said so fast he didn't understand it or where he was supposed to go. During the season, Bill Belichick would randomly quiz his players on their upcoming opponent. So in meetings, Gronk kept his scout book on the floor in between his feet. And when Bill called on him one day, he looked down and started flipping through the pages of the book with his toes. It was obvious he was doing this, and in response, Bill just said, "Jesus Christ, Gronk." Rob also had a hard time learning the playbook, so throughout the first 8 weeks of his rookie season, he was only getting about 15 to 20 snaps a game. But then, when the playbook finally clicked for him around week 9, everything changed. In a Week 10 matchup with the Steelers, Gronk had the best game of his young career, catching 5 passes for 72 yards and 3 touchdowns, which made him the youngest rookie in NFL history to accomplish this feat. But that wasn't the most important moment of his rookie season. That moment came in Week 14 when he finally gained the trust of Tom Brady. In the week leading up to this game, the coaches had Gronk practice a specific route where he had to box out the defender over and over again until he ran it perfectly. Then, with 4 minutes left in the game, that play was called. Tom looked at Gronk in the huddle and said, "This is it." Rob knew this play would make or break his rookie season. And when he got to the line of scrimmage, he was lined up against one of the best linebackers in the game, Brian Urlacher. Gronk then ran his route to perfection and caught the touchdown pass from Brady. After that, Gronkowski played every snap for the Patriots. He earned everybody's trust in that moment. Rob finished his rookie season with 42 catches for 546 yards and 10 touchdowns, which was the most scores caught by a rookie tight end since the NFL-AFL merger. Also guys, have you ever been watching a game that's so good, both teams are scoring on like every drive, you can't take your eyes away from the TV, but then you get hungry? Well, that takes me to the sponsor of today's video, DoorDash. I have been in that exact situation before, and DoorDash saved the day. Instead of having to decide between watching the game and getting up to make something to eat, I got food delivered right to my door with DoorDash. With DoorDash, you can have almost anything from your local neighborhood delivered. Food, flowers, alcohol, retail items, and more straight to your door. True story, last January, I was super sick and couldn't sleep. It was like 3 a.m. and I had no medicine left. So I went on the DoorDash app and got some delivered right to my door, even though it was 3 a.m. DoorDash is your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to get almost anything delivered. And using code SPORTS2024, get 50% off up to $10 on your first order of $15 or more. Even though he showed great potential as a rookie, no one could have predicted what would happen Gronk's second year in the league. In 2011, at just 22 years old, Rob Gronkowski became the best tight end in the NFL. He started the season red hot, Throughout just the first 3 games, he already had 281 yards and 5 touchdowns. He was unstoppable. At 6'6", 265, he was almost impossible to tackle. Defenders would just bounce right off him, or sometimes if they didn't, he would just keep running and drag them along for the ride. He played like he was a runaway train or a bowling ball or something else that's really big and fast and just doesn't stop moving. In week 13, he broke the NFL's record for the most touchdowns in a single season by a tight end after scoring 3 versus the Colts, which brought his total on the year up to 14. Gronk finished the regular season with 1,327 yards and 18 touchdowns, setting the NFL record for the most yards and touchdowns by a tight end in a single season. His 17 receiving scores were the most by any player in the league that year too. It was truly the most dominant single season performance we've ever seen from a tight end. Gronk just wasn't an elite pass catcher, he was an elite blocker too. He legit blocked better than some teams' starting tackles. He could go one-on-one with some of the best pass rushers in the league and win. These days, that's something we rarely see from tight ends. And oh yeah, his personality definitely helped him thrive on the field. Gronk was someone who was genuinely happy when playing football. He was like a big kid out there. The moment was never too big for him because he was just having fun. He never let the pressure phase him. It allowed him to play free, and while some people may believe he was just a dumb jock, his football IQ was off the charts. It was just hard for people to tell because of his goofy personality. In the Patriots' first playoff game that season, Rob continued to dominate, catching 10 passes for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. He alone actually had more catches than the entire Broncos offense that game. Yeah, Tebow only completed 9 passes in that one. The following week, the Patriots won the AFC Championship game and were heading to the Super Bowl. But in that game, things took an unexpected turn. Gronk had suffered a high ankle sprain, and no one knew if he'd be ready to go for the big game. But despite the injury, we did get this iconic post-game clip of him trying to say in Spanish, "I'm going to party," but instead saying, "I am party."
Yo soy fiesta.
2 weeks later, when the Super Bowl arrived, Gronk suited up. If it was any other game, he wouldn't be playing, but he knew with a Lombardi trophy on the line, he had to play through the pain. Once the game started though, it was clear Rob was far from 100%. On the very last play of the game, he had a chance to catch the potential game-winning Hail Mary off a deflection. The ball was hanging in the air, but he couldn't dive far or fast enough to haul it in. Gronk finished the game with one of his worst stat lines ever, catching just 2 passes for 26 yards. After the loss, Rob caught some heat, but not because of his performance on the field. Hours after the game, the tight end was spotted partying and dancing on his bad ankle. Rob later said he rarely gets to hang out with all his brothers at once. So he was like, why am I gonna sit here and sulk all night? Why not enjoy their company? After Gronk's historic season, the Patriots knew they needed to lock him up for a long time. So they gave the 23-year-old the largest contract ever for a tight end in NFL history, a 6-year, $54 million deal. That summer was the summer of Gronk. He partied, was on the cover of ESPN's Body Issue, and partied some more. He would stay out till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, then get dropped off at the Patriots practice facility. He would fall asleep on a training table. Then, when one of the trainers arrived for the workday, they would give Gronk an IV while he was still sleeping. Then boom, when he woke up, he was fine and would absolutely dominate whatever training he had to do for that day. Rob started the 2012 season at a historic pace. Throughout just the first 10 games of that year, he had 748 yards and 10 touchdowns. But then, in week 11, he broke his arm and was sidelined till the last game of the regular season. In the Patriots' first playoff game that year, just Gronk's second game back, he re-injured the arm and had to have season-ending surgery. His recovery was far from smooth though. In February, his arm developed an infection, and he ended up needing a total of 4 surgeries on it. Then, once his arm was fully healed, he had back surgery in June for a lingering issue with a herniated disc. After a long offseason with multiple surgeries, Rob was finally cleared to return to the field in week 7. In his first game back, he looked like his old self, racking up 114 receiving yards, and throughout his first 6 games back, Rob was averaging nearly 100 yards per game. But then, in week 14, tragedy struck. After making a catch, Gronk took an extremely hard hit to the knee. He was flipped on his head, then lied motionless on the ground. The injury turned out to be a torn ACL, a torn MCL, and a serious concussion. When his dad walked in the locker room to see his son, Rob didn't even know who he was. Some people believed this injury could be career-ending. Even Gronk questioned if he would be able to come back. He had suffered so many injuries due to his fearless physical style of play. But a visit to a children's hospital changed everything. Gronk saw these kids fighting so hard to overcome situations that were way more challenging than his. So in that moment, he knew he could make a comeback. The Patriots eased their tight end back into action in 2014. He only started 3 of his first 7 games played and was on a snap count. But in week 8, he broke out and showed everyone he was still the same old Gronk. Versus the Bears, he hauled in 9 catches for 149 yards and 3 touchdowns. And after this game, he just continued to dominate. He finished the 2014 regular season with 82 catches for 1,124 yards and 12 touchdowns. He was yet again named a first-team All-Pro and won the Comeback Player of the Year award. That 2014 season, the Patriots made it back to the Super Bowl. They had lost their last 2 appearances in the big game and hadn't won it in a decade, so the pressure was on. In that matchup with the Seahawks, Gronk had 6 catches for 68 yards and a score, which resulted in him hoisting the Lombardi Trophy for the first time in his career. To open the 2015 season, Gronk had another 3-touchdown performance, the 3rd of his career thus far. His numbers that year were much like his in 2014. He had 1,176 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns, which earned him first-team All-Pro honors for the 2nd consecutive year. Despite putting up an 144-yard, 2-touchdown performance in the AFC Championship game, the Pats lost 20-18 to the Broncos, which ended their season. 2016 was unfortunately another season full of injuries for Gronk. He missed the first 2 games of that year due to a hamstring injury. But in his first game without a snap count, he had 5 catches for 109 yards. And then the very next week, he had an insane 7 catches for 162 yards and a score. So when he was on the field, he was still dominating. The problem was, it was hard for him to stay on it. In week 12, he suffered a back injury that required season-ending surgery. There was a silver lining in that turbulent 2016 season, though. The Patriots won another Super Bowl, and Gronk got his 2nd ring. The tight end was healthy to start the 2017 season and looked like his old self. In Week 15 versus Steelers, he had a career-high 168 receiving yards. He finished the regular season with 69 nice catches, as Gronk would say, 1,084 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns, and was named a first-team All-Pro for the 4th time. That season, Gronk had an outstanding performance in the Super Bowl, hauling in 9 catches for 116 yards and 2 scores. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough, and the Eagles pulled off a huge upset with backup quarterback Nick Foles. Before the 2018 season began, the Patriots had actually agreed on a deal to send their tight end to the Lions. When Rob was called up and informed about the trade, he said, "Oh, I don't know how that trade could go through because I'm actually retired now." But when training camp rolled around, the tight end wasn't actually retired. He just didn't want to be traded to the Lions. The 2018 season was a rough one for Gronk. He missed a few games due to injury, but when he was on the field, he wasn't as productive. In the 13 regular season games he played that year, he only had 682 yards and 3 scores. New England yet again made it to the Super Bowl that season. In the big game, Gronk looked like the Gronk we were used to seeing. Versus an elite Rams defense, he had 6 catches for 87 yards, which was the 3rd most out of all the players on both teams. His big catch in the 4th quarter set up the game's only touchdown, which won the game for the Patriots. After getting his 3rd Super Bowl ring, Rob Gronkowski decided to retire. It was a move that shocked a ton of people. He was only 29 years old and still in his prime, but the injuries he sustained throughout his career were taking a toll on him not only physically, but also mentally. So Gronk enjoyed the retiree life for the entirety of the 2019 season. But then in 2020, when his QB signed with the Buccaneers, Rob decided he wanted to join him. So the Patriots, who still held the rights to him, granted his wish and traded him to the Bucs for a 4th-round pick. Tampa Bay's offense was loaded with talented receivers like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, so the now 31-year-old Gronk took on a role as more of a blocker. Don't get me wrong though, he still made big plays. He finished that 2020 regular season with 623 yards and 7 touchdowns. The Buccaneers made it all the way to the Super Bowl that year, and in the biggest game of the year, Tom went to the guy he trusted the most, his old reliable pal. In the big game, Gronk had 6 catches for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. This made him the first player in NFL history to catch a pass in 5 different Super Bowls. The Bucs ended up taking down the Chiefs 31-9 in that one, and Gronk got to take home his 4th ring. Before the 2021 season started, Rob decided to sign a 1-year deal to stay in Tampa Bay. Despite having to miss 4 games due to puncturing a lung in week 3, Gronk's numbers actually improved. In just the 12 regular season games he played, he had 802 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. At 32 years old, he was still dominating. In the final game of the regular season, he had 7 catches for 137 yards. The Bucs didn't reach the big game that year after losing to the eventual Super Bowl champion Rams in the divisional round. And after that season, Rob knew it was time to retire for good. There will never be another Rob Gronkowski. When he was healthy, literally no one could stop him. His blend of size, speed, and athleticism was so rare. There has never been another player that could block and catch at the level he could. If you want to know how the shortest player in NFL history dominated everyone, check out this video up here.